Welcome to another edition of the Voice of Palestine, Voice of the Palestinian People. It's August 24, 2013, and I'm your co-host, Hanna Qawas. This week we'll be talking with Ehab Lotayef, an Egyptian-Canadian activist and a poet from Montreal. Ehab will discuss the situation in Egypt, including the detention of the two Canadians by the Egyptian military, as well as update us on the progress with the Gaza Ark project. Good afternoon to you, Ehab, and welcome again to the Voice of Palestine.
Always good to talk to you, Hanna.
To start with, could you tell us what's happening, in Egypt? I mean, we covered it last week, really, with Dr. Haidar Eid on the Voice of Palestine, and he gave us the background about the Muslim Brotherhood, etc. But as an Egyptian, what do you think of what happened with the coup?
Well, I think that the situation in Egypt right now is quite a serious situation, and regardless of which side one is taking, there are facts that should not be ignored. And let me start by saying that I'm not one of the people who believe that the Muslim Brotherhood or Morsi as a president did a good job. But I'm also somebody who's very realistic about that, and I do realize that Morsi was against a very, very strong opposition from the inside, which is what we call in Egypt the deep state, or al-Dawla al-Amiqa. So that was beyond his or any other president's ability, because if that apparatus, which is deeply entrenched in the Egyptian society and institutions, government ministries, the army, police, the media itself, whether state-owned or not, had a lot of those beneficiary society, I would like to call them, that were living very well under the Mubarak regime and wouldn't like to see or surely would not support any change. So Morsi was up against those and trying to move the country forward according to his vision, and at the same time he had no skills of being inclusive. That's another big problem, because the Muslim Brotherhood in general, and not totally at a fault of their own, I think anybody who looks at their history would realize that they have become a very self-contained group, closed on themselves to a certain extent, and that's not something that would change between one day and the next. On the other hand, the media and the opposition, all kinds of opposition, whether they are belonging to the previous regime or the opposition that was more vocal and instrumental in the January 25th, 2011 revolution, all of them saw only faults. Maybe we can say that this is just the nature of the opposition. But the type of demonizing and exaggerating and dehumanizing, at some cases, Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood was above and beyond. And that led to a huge public unsatisfaction with him. I say huge, but I don't and would never say a majority or a certain number of people, because that can only, if one wants to be objective, that can only be established through the ballot box. And figures like saying 33 million people were in the street and stuff like that is not to anybody's benefit, because when we go into these one-upmanship statements, nobody will ever benefit. Things will just get muddled more and more.
Yeah, and how you can fit 33 million in the streets anyway?
Absolutely. I think 33 as a figure is a total farce. But even what was the figure itself is something that nobody who is responsible should be advocating or pushing either way. But there were large numbers and there was dissatisfaction. But what people ignore, I think, is that there was also a predetermined, some sort of pre-planned, and to what extent one would never be, again, to be objective, would never be comfortable in saying. But looking backwards now, it is realized that the army was ready to step in, and a lot of interest groups were supporting that move. And so this really stole away the energy and the strength of the public movement that was against the inefficiency of the Morsi presidency. It moved it from there to an illegal, unacceptable coup. That I mean, no matter what we want to explain, I discussed with so many people, and at the end of the day, no matter which way you look at it, it is a coup by all definitions of the word. It is not a public uprising that managed to unseat a president. Because if it was, then they should stay in the street, launched public disobedience, whatever, till he himself resigned or stepped down or transferred power or something. But for him to be removed by the military and detained, and still is detained till today, and then just to make it look better, those bogus charges were placed against him, or he was accused of something or the other. This is really the making of a coup. It's a slightly more intelligent coup than the traditional South American coups that we've seen many of in the 70s and such, but it is still a coup d'etat that cannot be justified, and nothing, unfortunately, nothing good can come out of it for the country. So this is really the background of how we reached where we were today, or where we are today.
Yeah, and really, you draw parallel with South America. I mean, the other parallel is that these generals are trained by the same masters in Washington. And, I just want to read you part of what Yuri Avnery from, the bloc, the Go Shalom bloc, said in his recent article. What is crucial for the generals, that's the Egyptian generals, is American political and military support. There cannot be the slightest doubt that acting, the generals asked for American permission, and that this support was readily given. So, I mean, it's obvious that the Americans supported the coup, and they wanted it a long time ago, because I remember during the revolt against Mubarak, the CNN interviewed the American general, and he said, and I'm really quoting word by word, we trained them, he said about the Egyptian general, we trained them and they know what to do. I saw that 2 years ago on CNN. So it's clearly the American hand and the support of the Israelis and their other puppet Arab regimes is clear. Their fingerprints are on it. Again, Yuri Avnery says if the Egyptian general had asked their Israeli colleagues he calls them, and friends, for advice on the coup, the Israeli would have promised them their enthusiastic support. So that's his estimation, Yuri Avnery. So what do you think of this outside involvement in the coup d'etat in Egypt?
I think, again, anybody who wants to see things for what they are would realize very clearly that the situation would not have been able to progress the way it did without the approval of certain powers. And let's not go into details, because again, sometimes we go too much into speculation. I will try to avoid that. But the ridiculous thing is that now the people who are supporting the coup are trying to say that it is Morsi and the Brotherhood who are supported by America, and that the powers, the international powers, are really wanting to make the coup fail, or make this new revolution, as they call it, fail, which is a total flipping of the facts. I mean, it's really difficult even sometimes to debate that, because it is such. I mean, I don't know if people's mind sometimes plays tricks on them, or they play trick intentionally.
Yeah.
But if it wasn't for shame, the Americans would have. I mean, do you see how reluctant they were to even use the word coup to define this? And that's after all the public pressure and all the media calling it that, and still the American administration is refusing and reluctant. So there is for sure. I mean, look, the Western powers, the world economic powers, and the world geopolitical powers, they care to keep a footstep into every door. They want a foot in every door. They will not make enemies except if they absolutely have to, like in the case of Iran or of Chavez. But other than that, they are trained very well to know how to deal with Morsi and how to deal with Sisi and how to deal with whatever alternative comes in, and they're experts in that. That's what the whole foreign policy is. So they are not taking sides out of principle. They are taking sides out of interest. And as long as their interests are served, they will continue going. And it is obvious that sooner or later, their interest would not have been served well enough with the Muslim Brotherhood, and it is clear that they will be able to control and play nice, if I can use the slang word, with Sisi, and that's a proof on its own where their direction goes.
Yeah, and the really, I call it the litmus test, is what this regime or the other regime does for Palestine. Like the Rafah border is still closed, so if they're really facing the American Zionist enemy, at least they'll act on supporting the Palestinian people who are being besieged for the last 8 years. So, I mean, the litmus test is where they stand practically, not just by talking and, blowing wind, on the issue. So it's clear that this coup, and yesterday, I believe, they blew some more tunnels. I'm not sure if you're aware of it, because I want to go also about the situation in Gaza and the siege on Gaza. Could you tell us a bit about what you know about this blowing of the tunnels yesterday? I believe Gaza Arc put it on their website.
Actually, before we leave Egypt, if I may, before we leave Egypt, I mean, because there is the latest development. I mean, it's not latest anymore, but the 10 days ago development of the massacre that people again are trying to downplay has reached a new level of unacceptability. This massacre that happened in Cairo, I mean, at around the Rabaa Mosque, but not only there, was a big act of really genocide. I mean, it is a crime against civilians, and till now people are. I hope there will be a new awakening, and I'm starting to see that, because you cannot justify such an action except by hate, great maliciousness, but also there is a plan there, and that's important for us to touch upon before leaving the topic of Egypt. The plan is that we here, being the coup leaders, the current government, and I'm not talking about the civilian puppet heads, I'm talking about the government who's really controlling it. They want to make sure they silence anybody who is against them by killing, by detaining, by changing the constitution, by spreading hate, by spreading fear, by bad-mouthing. They are going to use all the tools. But when it comes to killing, when it comes to a massacre of the size of 600 people in one day, Egypt has never seen something like that. And right now that we are not seeing enough reaction to that is very worrisome about the future. Yesterday and today, there started to be arrests from the other side, arrests of the leftists and the progressives. There were arrests from the Hamdin Sabbahi camp. There were arrests from the 6th of April camp. So I'm hoping that there will be more outcry from not the Western governments per se only, but all the freedom and justice lovers around the world. And we should really silence any kind of not silence in any forceful way, but counter-argue and confront anybody who tries to still give justification to the coup, and all the rest that's only coming out of, as a result of the coup.
Yeah.
And it's a big problem. It's a big battle that will continue to happen. It's not going to be easy to overturn this, and the first people who would see that are the people who supported the coup. It's not going to be easy to overturn it in any way, but we have to. That's why we have to stay fast and strong. And as I mentioned to you, or as we exchanged, we're having demonstrations here in Montreal, and every week the demonstration is growing bigger than the other one, and it's not about the size of the demonstration, it's about the people's will to confront and fight against this coup and keep on it till things go back to democracy and to justice.
Actually, as we're speaking now, there is a demo here in Vancouver also against the coup. But, I think there is a couple of points I'd like to make again before we leave the Egyptian scene. And I said it before in Voice of Palestine, it's really unprecedented, the incitement in Egypt against the Palestinians. And, to blame Hamas is one thing, but to blame the Palestinians for everything that happened in Egypt is unprecedented in the history of Egypt. And this is really hate speech and hate incitement against the Palestinian people. And this has happened by the military coup. It's clearly that. The other thing you talked about, Hamadan Sabahi, we and many Palestinians were disappointed at the beginning for him standing behind the coup. It's a news to me what you said. Now they are arresting some of his people?
Yes.
Yeah, and also there is the third square, if you heard of it, a movement small, but it seems it's growing. Do you know anything about it?
Actually, I know about the third square movement, and we tried, we started here in Montreal to make a equivalent movement to the third square, but we really, at the end, the group of us who were starting that, found that we have differences with the third square movement, because the third square movement is saying that we did not want Morsi's rule as a part of their platform. We think that is not the question right now. The question right now is the defense of democracy. It is not whether you agreed or disagreed with the Muslim Brotherhood or with Morsi. So we now formed a larger coalition here, the Egyptian-Canadian Coalition for Democracy. It is right now in Montreal only, but we're hoping that it would spread to other places in Canada, where our platform is much simpler than the third square. It is refusing the military coup in support of democracy and refusing everything that came with the military coup, the detentions, the appointment, the need to appoint independent committee to look into these killings and massacres, and at the end asserting that democracy can only be coming through the ballot box, not from rumors about numbers of people.
Actually, I draw a parallel with the aggression on Gaza. When the aggression on Gaza happened, we didn't say, no, we're not going to oppose the aggression because it's against Hamas. The Hamas was elected again the same way by majority vote. And, it's the ballot box, like you said. And really, it doesn't mean that we are supporting their platform. If we are against their platform, doesn't mean we let Israel massacre the Palestinian people in Gaza.
So I think it's a good segue to move from here to Gaza through what you mentioned last, which is this rise of blaming the Palestinians for everything or for a lot of things that are happening in Egypt. And maybe I will differ with you, Hannah, that it is really not that new. It's taking new levels right now. But Sadat did a bit of that in his time. Mubarak in his years did quite a bit of that, on and off, depending on the situation. And now, of course, it became a part of the platform of the coup leaders. This is really a disgusting manner, not only because it is false and absolutely unbelievable what they claim in most of the cases, but also because the Palestinian people today, and of course for decades now, have been suffering and have been in a weak position. Morally, you don't come against that kind of population to play a political game with. I mean, this is very, very dirty. So it's beyond just a political tactic. It's a very dirty political tactic. It's not only false, but it's also very, very cheap. And of course, I can't go beyond this without looking a little bit on the internal Palestinian conflict, and we can see that the fact that where Ramallah is allied and where Gaza is allied and all that, and the Palestinian Authority, because I don't want to categorize people in the West Bank and people in Gaza as anything, but the Palestinian Authority is far more comfortable right now, and there are speculations that there is some sort of coordination with the coup leadership.
Yeah, there is an Arab dimension for that, including Saudi Arabia and the Emirates and etc. And without the green light from the Americans, they won't have done it. It's clear to me, at least. And without the green light from the Zionists, they won't have done it. So it all fits together. And I think you are right. You know, I mean, it's no secret that Mahmoud Abbas, when Mubarak was in trouble, he phoned him and assured his support to him in the early stages of the revolution. And we had really an article as Canada Palestine about that on our website. But you know, the other thing, what they are doing, and we interviewed Kevin Nish a couple of weeks ago, and he said the military is not allowing anybody in, but they allowing people to leave Gaza, especially Western supporters. So it's clear that they closed the Gaza border for any contact with the outside, and this fits with the arrest of the two pro-Palestinian activists. One of them is from Palestinian background, and the other guy who's filming,
John Grayson,
who's a filmmaker. So could you tell us? You know, I really feel that this is an act of betrayal to the Palestinian people. And you know, I tell you frankly, Ehab, as a Palestinian, I feel Egypt betrayed the Palestinian cause with the signing of the Camp David Accord for the last 37 years. And, you know, not just the Palestinian cause, they betrayed their own people and the Arab people for the bribes of the Americans, which is really, compared to what America benefits from the Arab world, is negligible. You know, I mean, 1.3 billion is nothing really compared to what they reap from the profits in the Arab world. So, you know, it's clear that this betrayal not affected us, but you know, without it there won't have been 82 invasion. Without it there won't have been the attack on Iraq, Gulf 1, Gulf 2, and without it there couldn't have been meddling in the Arab internal affairs like in Libya, Syria, you know, all over the Arab world. So you know, it is really the basic problem is this Camp David Accord that bought some people and made them mercenary in the Egyptian government, and it continues till today. So I like to put it in this perspective because our listeners sometimes forget the history of it. So what do you think of that?
No, of course, the shift in strategy of the Egyptian foreign policies that started in the middle of the Sadat rule. It maybe have started in his mind much earlier than that, but it was a huge shift. It was Sadat was a Machiavellian type of leader, where I think he believed that the goal justifies the means, and he had dreams of a better Egypt, but in his head it was on the expense of everything else. He did not. It was obvious that he was not including any long-term Arab solidarity, and I'm not talking here about Arab solidarity in an emotional way. And I don't think actually Nasser ever had it in an emotional way in his head. I think it was all about, if you are alone and weak and not in good and strong solidarity relations with your neighbors, anybody from the outside to the further away world would find you an easy prey. And that was the principle where Nasser was working from. I think Sadat saw it very, very, very differently. And he started selling off all alliances and thinking that Egypt alone can stand strong in a void, which is a very miscalculated risk. And you don't play these games with countries. But that's what he did. So yes, in starting with Camp David, and of course we know we are of the age that witnessed Camp David, and during the time Camp David happened, it was not popular among anybody. So that is the reality and the start of the situation where Egypt is not really concerned or worried or going to support in any practical manner the Palestinian people. And there is a generation that grew up under this, and if they are not leftist or very progressively politically involved, they just adopted this same line, because that's what they grew up hearing in Egypt at that era. So yes, we have a very different environment right now than what we had in 1975 among the population of Egypt in general regarding the Palestinians, because I don't want to oversimplify this, because these attitudes towards the Palestinians cannot come from a leadership in total isolation from its people. Unfortunately, as an Egyptian of a certain age group, of a certain generation, I say it very clearly. This is not coming from void. The Egyptian population right now is not anywhere close to being as supportive or as understanding of the importance of the solidarity bridges and solidarity work between Egypt and Palestine and the whole region as my generation was when we were in our 20s and 30s. We mentioned about the arrest of the 2 Canadians by the Egyptian military. I'm really concerned also because ISM, the International Solidarity Movement, through Kevin and others, they put a call for people to come and witness and help the Palestinian people in Gaza. But with these 2 arrests, I think it's going to put a chilling effect on the volunteers that are going to Gaza. So in essence, again, this is a hostile act against the Palestinian people. What do you think of what I'm saying? We just have to, I agree with you in the final result, of course, but we have to think whether this is intended against the Palestinian people or it is intended for internal consumption. I don't really think that the Egyptian government right now, the current coup government right now, really cares if foreigners are inside Gaza doing solidarity work or not. What they care about at this point is to show that there is only bad coming to Egypt from Gaza, and there is only problems caused by that cause, and at the end of the day, they will treat anybody. Again, it's the same they're doing with, as we mentioned earlier, with any opposition. They're making them afraid they're making them uncomfortable, they're making them unwelcome.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing with anybody who wants to show solidarity with Gaza, because you know what? Gaza is not our cause.
Yeah.
But it's going to have the effect, of course, of having less internationals trying to go to Gaza, which leads us to Gaza's arc, really, because that's what we've been saying all along.
Yeah.
The people of Gaza should not be at the mercy of any other government for people to come in and out, or goods to come in and out, or services to come in and out of their territory. They have the sea, and the blockade from the sea should be removed. They shouldn't depend on Israel or on Egypt for that matter.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, could you update us on the Gaza arc? And recently I read that you postponed the timeline because
we did actually. We reviewed our timeline based mostly on the progress that we managed to do over the summer months. And of course we had forecasted that during the months of Ramadan and Eid, the productivity would be lower in our conversion process of the arc. But the situation in Egypt is what really affected us gravely, because of the situation in Egypt, for our listeners to understand, affects people in Gaza more than material, far more than material. Of course, they realize that the prices increase when there is less tunnel traffic, when there is less material, and things become less available, and they realize all that right away. But what affects them more, I think, is psychological. When they feel uncertainty, when they feel that the lack of the ability to move or have this channel, this last lifeline, it affects them psychologically a lot. And that affected our project and those working on it. So we decided that we will not attempt to sail this year. We will postpone our sailing attempt to the spring of next year. But meanwhile, we are as determined as we were about continuing the project and sailing. And we also, when we were taking this decision or discussing this, we had to be very clear and speak it out as well. Gaza's arc is not about the trip. It's not about the voyage of the Gaza's arc. It's about the energy while we are building the arc, not building it as material, but building it as an export project for the people in Gaza. What we need is a lot of public support from all over the world. Gaza's arc is not a Canadian project, although we are proud as a Canadian group to have taken quite a prominent role in it, but it's a project that exists and has support committees in 12 countries right now, and we hope that those countries, the number of countries, increase, and not only the number of countries, but the effectiveness of the support in Norway, in South Africa, in Greece, in Sweden, in Ireland, in Spain, America, Australia. It's very important to have strong voices supporting the arc while it's being built, and supporting the arc's right to sail out of Gaza, and putting pressure on Israel not to release the ark after it captures it, but to let it sail through, because there is no reason for it to be caught. And that is really the goal, and having more time will enable us to work on that quite a bit more. So we're hoping for more success by our revised timeline.
Yeah. Thank you really, Ehab, for talking to us today and giving us your insight on the situation in Egypt and Gaza. And, just before we leave, if you have a word to our listeners, and I read your poem, if you'll be gracious enough to read it for us on Voice of Palestine, that'll be great.
Hannah, I think we covered all what needs to be covered. I mean, there's always more, but I think we covered most of the important points. Mm-hmm. And I would surely be happy to share with you and with listeners my poem. It's in Arabic. It was written in Arabic, as you know and some people know, I write in both Arabic and English, but this poem was originally in Arabic, and then I'll provide a brief translation after reading the Arabic version.
Good, that'd be great. Thanks.
The poem is called State of Emergency, and it goes like this in Arabic. عيني عليك يا حرية، قلبي معاك يا حرية، طعنوك بخنجر مسموم كتبوا عليه ليبرالية. عيني عليك يا حرية، في قلبك حسرة وحنية، على زهرة ولد بهية، على كل ولد بهية، اللي اعتصموا واللي انتقموا، اللي عمتهم الكراهية، واللي امبارح هدوا السجن ورجعوا اليوم من تاني بنوه أعلى وأكبر، علشان يوسع كل بلدنا في الأيام السوداء الجاية.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. So you want to give us some brief translation?
A quick translation. Freedom, I weep for you. Freedom, I feel your pain. They hid a blade under the cloak of liberalism and stabbed you in the back. Freedom, I feel your pain. You cry for Egypt's brightest children. You cry for all of Egypt's children. Those who protested and those who attacked, blinded by hate. Those who demolished the prison only to rebuild it again, higher, larger, to have room for the whole country in those dark days that are upon us.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you, shukran, Ehab, and really keep up the good work, and we hope a bright future is certain for the whole Arab nation, including Egypt and Palestine. Thank you.
Inshallah. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And that was Hana Kawas talking with Ehab Lotayef from Montreal. And with that, we conclude another edition of the Voice of Palestine. I've been your co-host, Marian Kawas, and our final piece of music is by the late Egyptian singer Sheik Imam, Egypt, Rise Up. We dedicate it to the Arab people as they struggle against all the U.S.-led conspiracies to manipulate and oppress them and their resources.
الحيل كل اللي تتمنيه عندي، لا القهر يطويني ولا الليل أمان أمان برمبندي. رافعين جباه حرة شريفة، باسطين أيادي تأدي الفرد. رافعين جباه حرة شريفة، باسطين أيادي تأدي الفرد. ناقصين مؤذن وخليفة، ونور ما بين السماء والأرض. يا مصر عودي زي زمان، نتقابل الجمعة الحلوة. يا مصر عودي زي زمان، تعصي العدو وتعدي. أمان أمان دي رمفندي. يا مصر يا مصر قومي وشدي الحيل، كل اللي تتمني عليه عندي، لا القهر يطويني ولا الليل. أمان أمان دي رمفندي. يسعد صباحك يا جنينة، يسعد صباح اللي رواكي، يا خضرا من زرع ايدينا، شربتي من بحر هواكي، شربتي من كاس محبوبي، وعشقتيني الأسمر نوبي وغسلتي في بدني وطوبي وكتبتي اسمه على زندي أمان أمان بيرم أفندي يا مصر قومي وشدي الحيل كل اللي تتمني عني